Hey everybody, what's up? Rachel here with Givebutter. Thanks for joining for another success story from the Givebutter community. Today, we are featuring Knock Knock Give a Sock. Recently, this organization's Pair of Books project campaign raised over $35,000 on Givebutter, all in an effort to help humanize homelessness through 2 children's books. And this is above and beyond their $25,000 goal. So if you're looking for a successful, creative, clever crowdfunding example, this one is for you. I have Adina here with me to share how they made this event so successful, as well as tips, tricks, and lessons learned along the way. Adina, thank you so much for joining and sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to help other people who are trying to raise money because it's a hustle.
Truly. So before we dive in, I would love if we could start by just having you share a little bit more about who you are and about Knock Knock Give a Sock, which, side note, this is like one of my favorite mission statements ever. So please tell us more.
Thank you so much. So I'll take you back a couple years to my sophomore year in college. I was giving out sandwiches to some of my neighbors on the street. And one guy said, "Ma'am, it's so nice you're giving out sandwiches, but one thing we could actually really use are a pair of socks." And I opened my drawer and I saw my socks weren't going to fit him. So I decided to actually knock on every door on my floor. And in about 15 minutes, I got over 40 pairs of socks. Fast forward to my senior year of college, we collected over 50,000 pairs of socks. We spread to over 20 college campuses. I had to become a certified nonprofit because I needed to raise money because my parents were like, "Get these socks out of our garage now." That they were great, big support system, but that's how we became a nonprofit. I was like, I need a place to store these socks, as we start sending them out. And basically by the time I was a senior in college, I joked that I kind of became the sock celebrity. And what was interesting is people would ask me to come speak about the work that we were doing collecting these socks. And it was at that time, people would ask me to come speak in their college classrooms, in their synagogues, in their churches. And I would always ask the audience 2 questions. So anyone here listening, think about these 2. 1, have you ever given money, food, or clothing to someone in need, either to shelter, donation bin? Most of you are probably nodding your head, yeah. The second question I ask is, who here can tell me the name of one person living in a homeless shelter or on the streets? And most people couldn't. Maybe sometimes they could say, "Oh, I know, I recognize that guy," but actually knowing the names, knowing the stories of our neighbors is something that we don't really know, unfortunately. So I want to change that. My senior year of college, I decided to bring 50 of my college classmates and 50 people who were living in local shelters to have dinner side by side with basically 2 rules. 1, you couldn't sit next to someone that you knew beforehand. 2, no one was allowed to serve one another, right? It was family style meals. By the end of the night, college students were saying, "Adina, we can't tell who's homeless and who's not." They were meeting moms who had 3 kids who couldn't afford childcare, dads who gotten out of prison, couldn't get jobs afterwards, people working minimum wage jobs, but that doesn't get you out of the shelter system. So now homelessness had a name and a face and a story. So what I want to do is I wanted to bring this to the corporate space. Now, what was I going to do? I couldn't knock on JP Morgan's door and be like, "Hey, let's have a dinner with your employees and people living in shelters. Oh, and let's do it in your office." That was too radical. But what we were able to do is we were able to approach JP Morgan. We were able to approach these corporate companies and say, "Hey, do you want to do a sock collection in your office?" And they're like, "Yeah, nice name, easy, doesn't take up a lot of space." And after they would do a sock collection, we then would offer their companies the opportunity to meet the people who received these socks, right? Through employee engagement opportunity. We're able to do a meet your neighbor dinner with their employees and people living in shelters. And so that's when Knock Knock Give a Sock's mission statement became humanizing homelessness one sock at a time by turning transactions into interactions. So over the last 3 years in our pre-COVID world, we would basically engage companies and corporate offices and sock companies in collecting socks for us. And we would then hire people living in local shelters to help us distribute these socks. 2, we would do these meet your neighbor lunches and dinners, bring together corporate offices and people living in shelters to dine side by side. And 3, we would do a big holiday carnival every year for over 300 kids living in shelters. And that was what Knock Knock Give a Sock looked like. And then we got hit by COVID, right?
Mhm.
We all got hit, and there was so much tragedy and there was so much pain.
Mhm.
Um, but there was also a lot of social isolation. And for
Yeah.
us, we weren't able to do our events. We weren't able to bring communities and neighborhoods together. So I had to think of a way, how can we achieve our mission? How can we share these stories between these two communities in a way when we can't bring people together in person? And that's when I thought about these two children's books. And through that, I decided that we would humanize homelessness through two children's books. One tells a story about a girl living in a home, and one about a girl living in a shelter, who both are heroes, who both make an impact in their neighborhood, and using those stories to be able to share these stories in a time when we can't be together in person.
Wow. So beautiful, such an inspiring story. And to hear how you've pivoted in the last years, just so inventive. Why children's books? I saw that you were like listed as co-author on the book. Have you written children's books before, or what was the inspiration for that as the fundraiser?
Yeah, so this is my first time writing children's books. I dove into it. I tell a lot of stories to my nieces and nephews. And during COVID, I lived with them for 6 months. And the books are actually for ages 5 to 9. And my
Okay.
nieces and nephews are between the ages of 5 to 9.
Oh, how
So
sweet.
I tell them a lot of stories. The reason why I thought children's books were important um, was because there's, I think we as people, um, and this is as someone who's grown up with my niece and nephews, um, we really internalize lessons by teaching it. I think, when people become parents, I think they become better people. I really do. I think when people are around children, they become better people, because it's like, oh, it's important to be kind. It's important to do this, right? We're constantly teaching those values. I think when we teach those values, they actually get instilled in us. And so it was a way of kind of like killing two birds with one stone, right? Being able to uh, get kids to internalize these lessons, but also get parents to internalize these lessons, I think was also really important.
It's
I'll
really.
take it one step further. There was actually on the Upper West Side in,
Mhm.
in Manhattan, there were a lot of shelters that were being moved into that area. And it's an area that didn't have many shelters, but they're being moved into hotels to create more social distancing for people living in shelters. And families were up in arms. Families were really upset. They felt it was dangerous for their kids. They didn't feel comfortable. There were a lot of petitions being sent around. I even saw the petitions. Like, wouldn't someone know if they're friends with me on Facebook not to post that? But there were really petitions against, you know, shelters being moved into hotels in their area because of fear and stigma around
Mm.
homelessness. And I said, we need these families to understand. And I said, children's books.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's such an approachable, thoughtful way to educate people, bring awareness to your cause, and also just cast vision for future change makers, right? I love the lead and of the story that you're trying to tell. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so people can see your beautiful campaign page that I know everyone following along right now wants to see. So a few things that stood out to me that were just so beautifully done in this campaign. Video headers tend to perform better than pictures. So kudos to you for having this beautiful, short, sweet video overview of your crowdfunding campaign. And then your story section includes visuals, short and sweet copy, and you clearly list out the incentives for donating that match each different giving level. So consistency was also key on this one. To me, when I was looking at it, so hats off to you, so well done. What comes to mind when you think of tips, tricks, lessons learned that helped you raise 10,000 over your goal as we look at your campaign page? What were the elements that you think really just gave it that boost?
So this is one thing that I actually think is super important. Before any campaign goes live, I try to get a couple people. So initially my campaign goal was going to be $20,000.
Oh, wow.
And so my goal was to raise $10,000 from people before we went live. You
Mhm.
know, um, so I got around $12,000 in commitments, right? When I was trying, like, let's say I had like 15 people I wanted to approach in terms of giving between $1,000 $500 and $1,000, right? I got like 15 people to commit between the $500 and $1,000 range based on past year's donations.
Mhm.
And so I approached those 10, 15 people. They all said yes. By the time we were done with that, one person committed $5,000. So by the time we got done with that, we actually were at $12,000, which was great.
Amazing.
So once we were at $12,000, I was like, okay, I guess I'll push it to 24. And just to round it up, I was like, let's make it 25. So kind of everyone wants to give to a campaign that's already 50% done so that they can see themselves moving the mark along. That's really what I would say is the biggest piece of advice I can give.
Yeah, those are good gifts.
The second thing is giving yourself between a week or two to do it. Even though I never closed the campaign, I had a mental clock for when it was gonna turn off and on. And that was really important for me. And so I put it in our newsletter. I sent a text. I went through my phone and was texting people I haven't spoken to in years. I was going through my phone. I was going on. This is where I got a little aggressive. Anyone on Facebook who liked my post,
Yeah.
or anyone on LinkedIn who liked my post, I would be like, hey, I see you like my post. I would love if you could contribute. I think your nieces and nephews would love. I would, so real hustle.
Yes, I love that. That's the real grind of fundraising for crowdfunding campaigns. One question I have for you on this as well is what made you choose incentives for your giving level? Because not every organization goes that route. Why did you choose that and how did you make that work for you?
So I actually wasn't going to use Givebutter initially. I wasn't going to use GoFundMe. I was going to use Kickstarter
Mhm.
because this was my first time having a product. And then I saw that Kickstarter took close to 8%. And then after you were done, literally like there were people who said it took 12%, and that's only, and if you don't hit your goal, then they take away all, like, then none of it goes through. Like, it's just insane. And so then I was like, okay, let me check out GoFundMe. Let me check out, all these other give back campaigns. And then I saw that Givebutter was the only one that had that built in, where it showed where you can manually choose in the option. So I know that usually for Givebutter, it's like, $10 because you love the organization, $35 gets 3 pairs of socks, $100 like store
like
socks.
like impact metrics.
Yeah. So I saw that they had like the impact giving level. So I changed that a little bit
I love it.
to follow the Kickstarter campaign model because we actually had a product.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So that was the key deliverable for you. We are using a product this time for fundraising. And so we're going to make the fundraising experience feel a little different. And that clearly resonated with your supporters because they showed up in a big way for you and you raised well above and beyond your fundraising goal.
I was always shocked when someone would give like $18 or $20, not because like, I was just like, but you're not getting anything. Like, why you should pay a little bit more and you'll get something.
Right.
I appreciate the support nonetheless.
Absolutely.
A couple stamps.
Absolutely. Adina, do you have any other tips, tricks, or lessons learned with this campaign that you could share with other fundraisers who are listening right now?
This is like goes just to fundraising in general. When you have a campaign, the cause, if you want to be successful, has to be bigger than your ego. Like, it's awkward to hit someone who said, yeah, I want to give, and then like doesn't, and you have to be like, hey, were you able to get a set of books yet? And kind of having that, I like to use this word because I'm very Jewish, but you got to have that chutzpah a little, and it's, you kind of have to be careful, right? If someone says like, yeah, I'll send it along to friends, done. That's their no. But if someone just says like, wow, that's such an incredible campaign, then you'd be like, yeah, I'd love for you to get one, and it's kind of like, you kind of have to see where they're at. No one's going to tell you no. I always, when I'm sending it out, I would say, hey, I would love if you could share this with some friends or get a set for someone you love, right? Giving them that out because you don't want to be obnoxious about it, right? Not everyone's in the same financial situation. But giving them that option always in your messaging, being like, hey, I would love if you could share this, or contribute to it.
So giving people clear directions for how they can support you. And what I love that you're emphasizing is it's about relationships. And I can tell just looking at your supporter feed that you have built such real relationships with people and how they commented on some of their donations. You're an amazing person. Clearly Helen feels really connected. Um, and so I love just looking at your supporter feed and seeing all the fun notes. And that's just such a great tip for everybody that's following along to never lose sight, as you're hustling and being bold and directing your ask, that it is about relationships at the end of the campaign. So kudos to you, your entire team, and all of the countless lives that you're going to change through this campaign. Thank you for using Givebutter.
Thank you. And thank you for allowing Givebutter to be used by me. It was such a special campaign. And I remember being like, okay, I was gonna give myself 2 weeks, and like we hit our goal within a week. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do another 10K for the next week, like just make like a mental goal. And then I was like, I was so burnt out by the end just because I was like literally seeing from my computer, like messaging, but it was very rewarding.
Absolutely. And for everybody who's following along, if they want to follow you, if they want to get a book themselves, where can they find you?
So we have a Shopify website up already. But I would say right now, go to Givebutter. Use the Givebutter link that you're going to see probably attached to this video. And for $35 donation, you can get a set of these books.
Beautiful. And for all of you who are following along, thank you for joining for another incredible success story. We hope to see you next week. And just so you don't miss another one, click follow below on Givebutter's YouTube channel and make it easy for yourself, because we have lots of inspiring stories coming up in the next several weeks. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you again. Until then, happy fundraising. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.